Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, the hero of the Clone Wars, the Jedi Knight who was destined to bring balance to the Force, a warrior so powerful that even the Jedi Council hesitated to train him. But what if I told you that Anakin Skywalker, the man who seemed to have it all, was in fact the biggest underachiever in Star Wars history? That's right. Despite all his power, all his victories, Anakin Skywalker fell short. So short, in fact, that the galaxy would pay the price for generations. This isn't just a story of a hero's fall. It's a story of wasted potential, of a destiny that was never fulfilled. In this video, we will be discussing 9 reasons that prove Anakin is without a doubt Star Wars' biggest underachiever. So if you are skeptical, be sure to watch this video to the end to get all the evidence to support this discussion. I guarantee that by the end of this video, you will be absolutely convinced. Also, please like, subscribe, and share this video to as many people as possible, as this little thing makes a huge difference and would help me out so much. Now, let's get back to the video, and I hope you enjoy the content. From the moment Qui-Gon Jinn discovered Anakin Skywalker, the entire galaxy held its breath. The prophecy of the Chosen One was clear. He would bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. The Jedi Council, for all its wisdom, could not ignore the unprecedented strength in the Force that radiated from this young boy. Anakin wasn't just any Jedi. He was destined to be the Jedi, the greatest of them all. Yet this prophecy, while promising greatness, also sowed the seeds of Anakin's downfall. The weight of destiny is a heavy burden, and for a boy who grew up as a slave, the expectations were almost unbearable. But as it turned out, even a prophecy couldn't guarantee success. Anakin was told from a young age that he was special, that he was destined for greatness. But what happens when you're told you're the savior of the galaxy, and you start to believe it? The pressure to fulfill this destiny began to mold Anakin in ways the Jedi never anticipated. Anakin's potential was unmatched. As a child, he was the only human who could pod race, displaying reflexes that even seasoned Jedi Masters would envy. He was a prodigy in combat, mastering lightsaber techniques and force abilities that took others years to perfect. Anakin's prowess in the Clone Wars solidified his reputation as the most powerful Jedi of his time. But potential doesn't always lead to greatness. Yoda, the wise and cautious Grand Master of the Jedi Order, saw what others did not. Much fear in him, I sense. Fear, as we know, is the path to the dark side, and for Anakin, this fear was rooted not just in the loss he had experienced, but in the burden of his own potential. The same potential that made him extraordinary was also his greatest weakness. Despite his undeniable talent, Anakin's mind was a battlefield of its own. His successes on the field were mirrored by his struggles within. He was a Jedi unlike any other, but this uniqueness isolated him. His extraordinary abilities, instead of bringing him closer to his fellow Jedi, set him apart, made him arrogant, and fueled a sense of entitlement that would lead to his undoing. Anakin was impulsive, driven by his emotions he could never fully control. His fear of loss, his anger, and his need for power pushed him to make choices that would haunt him forever. These weren't just the mistakes of a young Jedi, they were the seeds of his downfall. Every time Anakin acted on impulse, the consequences were catastrophic, not just for himself, but for the galaxy. When Anakin slaughtered the Tusken Raiders in a fit of rage, it wasn't just an act of revenge for his mother's death. It was the beginning of a pattern where Anakin's emotions dictated his actions, leading him down a path from which there was no return. His need for control, born out of fear and insecurity, made him unpredictable and dangerous. Anakin's impulsiveness wasn't just about anger. It was also about his desperate need to protect those he loved. He believed that with enough power, he could prevent the pain of loss that had haunted him since childhood. But in his quest for power, he failed to see that he was losing himself. Every impulsive act was a step closer to the dark side, and a step away from the destiny he was meant to fulfill. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of Anakin's story is how easily he was manipulated by Palpatine. The Dark Lord of the Sith played on Anakin's fears, stoking the flames of his insecurities until they consumed him. Anakin had the power to see through the lies, but instead, he allowed himself to be twisted into Darth Vader. Palpatine was more than just a master manipulator. He was a father figure, a mentor, and the only person who seemed to truly understand Anakin's struggles. The Jedi Council, with their strict codes and emotional detachment, had failed to connect with Anakin on a personal level. But Palpatine? He knew exactly how to exploit Anakin's deepest fears and desires. Palpatine's greatest weapon was his ability to plant seeds of doubt in Anakin's mind. The story of Darth Plagueis the Wise was more than just a tale of the dark side. It was the key to unlocking Anakin's deepest fear, the fear of losing Padme. In that moment, Palpatine didn't just offer Anakin a way to save Padme. He offered him the power to control his own destiny. And that was a temptation Anakin could not resist. Anakin's growing mistrust of the Jedi Council, fueled by Palpatine's whispers, led him to question everything he had been taught. The Council's refusal to grant him the rank of Master wasn't just a slight. It was a confirmation of all the doubts Palpatine had been nurturing. Anakin began to see the Jedi as an obstacle to his power, rather than as the protectors of peace and justice. In his quest for power, Anakin didn't just lose his way. He lost his ability to trust. He became increasingly isolated, turning to Palpatine as the only person who truly understood him. But in doing so, he allowed himself to be manipulated into becoming something he was never meant to be. When Anakin turned to the dark side, it wasn't just a betrayal of the Jedi Order. It was a betrayal of his own destiny. The Chosen One was supposed to bring balance, but instead, he plunged the galaxy into darkness. In the moment he swore allegiance to Darth Sidious, Anakin Skywalker ceased to exist, and Darth Vader was born. This was the moment when all of Anakin's potential, all of his promise, was irreparably shattered. The hero became the villain, the savior became the destroyer, and in his quest to save the one he loved, he ended up losing everything. Anakin's descent into darkness was swift and merciless. The man who had once been the hope of the Jedi Order became its greatest enemy. In his blind pursuit of power, he committed atrocities that would haunt the galaxy for generations. The Chosen One had become the very thing he was meant to destroy. But even as Darth Vader, Anakin's potential remained unfulfilled. He was powerful, yes, but his power was tainted by the dark side. He became a tool of the Emperor, a pawn in a game he never fully understood. The boy who was destined to bring balance to the Force had become an agent of chaos. Anakin's fear of loss was the driving force behind many of his actions. He wanted to protect those he loved, but in the end, he failed them all. He couldn't save his mother, he couldn't save Padme, and ultimately, he couldn't save himself. Anakin's need to control the future to prevent the pain of loss blinded him to the reality of his situation. In his desperation to save Padme, he made a pact with the devil, a choice that would doom them both. His love for Padme, which should have been his greatest strength, became his greatest weakness. In the end, Anakin's actions didn't save Padme. They destroyed her. The very thing he feared most, the loss of the woman he loved, came to pass because of his own choices. His fall to the dark side was not just a betrayal of the Jedi, it was a betrayal of everything he held dear. Anakin's story is one of tragic irony. The man who sought to save the ones he loved ended up causing their demise. His need for control, his fear of loss, led him down a path that left him with nothing but regret. Anakin's power was unmatched, but so was his capacity for self-destruction. Throughout his journey, Anakin had moments where he could have turned back, where he could have made the right choice, but each time he chose the darker path. Each time he dug himself deeper into a pit of his own making. These moments of hesitation, these flashes of doubt, were glimpses of the man Anakin could have been, but never allowed himself to become. When Anakin stood before Palpatine and Mace Windu, he was faced with a choice: uphold the Jedi ideals he had sworn to protect, or give in to his fear and anger. In that moment, he chose the latter, sealing his fate as Darth Vader. But what if, just for a moment, he had chosen differently? What if he had trusted in the Force rather than his own fears? Even as he dueled Obi-Wan on Mustafar, there were moments where Anakin could have stepped back from the brink. But his pride, his anger, his need to prove himself all pushed him forward. And with each strike of his lightsaber, he moved further away from the destiny he was meant to fulfill. Anakin's story is filled with missed opportunities for redemption, each more tragic than the last. He was a man who could have been a hero, a savior, but instead, he became a cautionary tale. The road to redemption was always open to him, but he chose to walk the path of destruction. Anakin's failure wasn't just personal, it had galactic consequences. His inability to rise above his flaws led to the near extinction of the Jedi Order, the rise of the Sith, and the decades of tyranny under the Empire. The galaxy, which had once looked to him as a beacon of hope, was plunged into darkness because of his choices. His legacy for most of his life was one of destruction, pain, and lost potential. The Empire, the Death Star, the oppression of countless worlds, these were the fruits of Anakin's failure to fulfill his destiny. He became the symbol of everything he was supposed to stand against. Anakin's fall didn't just doom the galaxy, it doomed his own family. The father who could have raised his children in a peaceful galaxy instead became the terror they had to defeat. His son, Luke Skywalker, would grow up not knowing the man his father once was, only the monster he had become. Anakin's legacy was a burden his children would have to carry, a shadow they would have to escape. Imagine what could have been if Anakin had lived up to his potential. The galaxy could have known peace instead of war, balance instead of chaos. He could have been the greatest Jedi of all time, a leader, a father, a true hero. Instead, the galaxy was left with the scars of his failure. But instead, Anakin Skywalker remains the greatest underachiever in Star Wars history. A man who had the power to save the galaxy, but ultimately destroyed it instead. His story is a reminder that potential, no matter how great, can be wasted, that even the chosen one can fall, and that the greatest heroes can also be the galaxy's greatest disappointments. Anakin's final act of redemption, saving his son and destroying the Emperor, was a powerful moment, but it was too little, too late. The damage had been done. The galaxy he left behind was still in turmoil, and the Jedi Order was in ruins. Anakin's legacy, for all its moments of greatness, is ultimately one of failure, a stark contrast to the destiny he was meant to fulfill. Anakin Skywalker's story is one of the greatest tragedies in Star Wars history. It's a tale of potential unfulfilled, of a destiny lost, and of a hero who became a villain. But it's also a story that leaves us with questions. What if Anakin had made different choices? What if he had embraced his destiny instead of fearing it? What if he had lived up to his potential? The answers may be lost to time, but the lessons remain. What do you think? Did Anakin live up to his potential, or did he fall short? Let us know in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the Star Wars universe. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one.